Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
Exploring the unexplained,
breaking down barriers,
putting the macabre under the microscope,
dissecting the disturbing,
seeking out the sinister,
bringing you the jinkies and the jump scares.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Freaky Friday, podcasting not live from the mother city, Cape Town.
The mysterious mother city.
And that'll lead us straight in, because that is what we are exploring today. The hauntings of Cape Town and all its spooky tales.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this because, this is where we're from.
Exactly. We've been all over the globe with our stories and tales, and I think it's way overdue that we bring it back home and talk about what's exactly around us.
Because, through research, I've realized that Cape Town has a lot of hauntings.
A lot of different things. That is actually very understated.
Yeah, there's a lot of history in Cape Town, so naturally there's going to be a lot of hauntings, but I was surprised by how many there are.
Me too. And it ranges from ghost ships to ghost riders, even mermaids.
Okay, I found nothing about mermaids.
And I saw that piqued your interest and I knew it would.
You saw my eyebrows perk.
I did.
Wait, can we spark notes that mermaid thing?
We'll come back to it if we have time.
I'm very intrigued.
Well, like you said, the mother city is one of the oldest cities in the country.
Yeah.
So there's plenty for us to talk about. But I think it's only right that we start with the one and only Table Mountain.
Yeah, it's what Cape Town's known for.
Exactly, this gracious and majestic rocky splendor.
That looks like a table.
But people travel all over the world to come and look at this table.
Look at our table, it's majestic.
And what's more, it's tablecloth.
Yes.
Which is actually was the first ghost story I found on my list.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Do tell. I'm listening.
So, supposedly, Table Mountain, for those of you who don't know about Table Mountain, every now and then a cloud bank will descend on it and go completely over it, spilling over onto the sides. And not quite what my dad told me when I was little, that it's milk falling over the sides of the mountain. The general thing that people knew was that it was Table Mountain's tablecloth.
Yeah, I remember moving here, my mom being like, look at the tablecloth. And I was like, the what now?
Exactly. And if you live in Cape Town, you've more than likely heard that story before. And the legend of that goes, there was a retired Dutch pirate called Van Hunks. And he had a great love for pipe smoking. And one day, this pirate was smoking at his favorite spot, which was on the slopes that we know as Devil's Peak. And a stranger approached and challenged him to a smoking duel. And some actually say that this contest went on for days, but
Sorry, I have a really bad joke.
What?
So they were seeing who could smoke the other under the table.
Oh my God, Tim.
You're welcome, audience. Anyway, carry on.
I don't know if I can after that. Anyway, so from all the smoking, a really large cloud of smoke enveloped them and then Table Mountain. And just as Van Hunks won the competition, he realized that the stranger was actually the devil. And the devil was not impressed about being beaten. And so the two of them vanished in this supposed bright flash of lightning, leaving behind only the huge smoke cloud.
Okay. I vaguely remember the story. There's I believe, a brewery in Cape Town called Van Hunks.
There is.
And on the side of, I don't know if it's all of their bottles, but specifically one of their bottles of beer, they have the story, or had the story.
Really? I didn't know that.
It was the first time I heard of it. I think I bought a bottle of pumpkin ale or something. And the story was on the side there.
I actually want to go check out for that now.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still like that, but it was a couple of years ago. But I actually heard a very different story. I'm going to probably get details completely mashed up here. But I heard that there was someone who... cannot remember the details, but someone's son
Oh, I do know the
Do you
story.
know the story?
It was a governor of Cape Town,
Yes.
and he made an enemy of a citizen within the city. And the citizen came up with this really dark plan, and he gave the owner's son a beautiful flute as a gift, but left out the fact that the flute had actually belonged to a leper.
Yeah.
And when he gave it to the boy, it caused the boy to contract the leprosy disease. And so he had to move, I think, into he was forced into exile in a lonely hut up on the mountain.
And so you can hear the flute playing.
Exactly. He played his flute until he died. And they say on still evenings, you can hear that mournful tune sort of playing down into the valley.
So creepy. Things you don't want to hear on a mountain.
Not really. So I think, there were actually a lot of... Because Cape Town was known for its storms. I mean, it was called the Cape of Storms. And I mean, we can't forget, we have already spoken about this in a previous episode, but we can't forget that we are the origins of the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
Which is a very well-known ghost story.
Got our very own ghost ship.
That they made movies on, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh yeah, of course. Completely forgot about that.
But I mean, yes, the waters around Cape Town can be really wild. And they're really, back in the day, when people were trying to sort of establish trading routes, and the wild waters sort of just ruined those plans for them, because there was just so much turmoil in trying to cross that sea, and there were so many shipwrecks. So Flying Dutchman story aside, that actually sparked a whole lot of other stories about theories about Table Mountain, that these shipgoers would sort of, they like their stories and legends, so they came up with all these things. And one of them was that Table Mountain is an angry Greek god.
Okay.
Which made really a lot of sense to the Portuguese sailors who were trying to find their way to India and had to face these waters. And it was inspired by a poem where the mountain was sort of likened to an angry, hostile, and vindictive giant who suffered from some kind of inner turmoil and wouldn't allow anyone to pass through the rough seas of the area.
Isn't that a storyline from Moana?
You're right. Now that I said that out loud.
I'm pretty sure that's the storyline.
You're so right.
Oh my word.
Well, supposedly, after years of trouble, the great beast finally was defeated, and this was evidence because suddenly trips were able to make successful rounding trips around Africa. That is just going to stay with me now, the
I'm
Moana.
still
Well done.
I'm still laughing about it.
Other sailors believe that Table Mountain is a double-headed Roman god.
Okay.
That he was the physical manifestation of that god. And this mythological being was considered to be a gatekeeper who facilitated new beginnings and transitions, but he was also able to look into the future and past at the same time. So in the form of this god, Table Mountain was then thought to be this it was thought to sort of safeguard the African tip. And he controlled who passed from east to west and who transitioned from the old world to the new world.
I knew none of these stories about.
Neither did I,
Table
and I was
Mountain being
quite
a
shocked
god.
about it. But you can hear those are definitely foreign stories.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of stories we would come up with over here.
Yeah. But moving on from Table Mountain, which is great. I don't know, wait, do you have more Table Mountain stories?
Not really. There was some people who claimed that the mountain is made up of crystals. And that's why it's responsible for the calm, laid-back nature of the city. You know what? That's funny because I'll be honest, Cape Town has a very laid-back vibe.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, like I said, moving on, one of the most interesting ghost stories, I think it was one of the first that I sort of came across when I moved here, was the Rondebosch ghost house. I don't know if you've seen it.
I think I have. I didn't know about it, but in doing this research and I saw the picture, I was like, I've driven past that before.
Yeah, so when I first moved here, obviously being a little creep and loving anything paranormal, did my research, and I lived in Rondebosch when I first moved here, and heard about this house. And I remember having like a day off and I was like, I'm gonna go look for this house. Could not find it. And then like years later I drove past and I was like, that's it. And you can't miss it. It's a beautiful house. I don't know what...
Bright red, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what era it's from. It might be like a Victorian era house, but it's absolutely stunning.
Yeah, I think it's from around the 1970s.
Yeah, and there have been, rumors about this house for years that it was apparently like, I think around the 70s, was used as like a cult space.
Yes, I've heard that one before, that like it was a strange cult resided there.
Yeah.
And they performed some sort of like dark activities and they left behind a really dark and mysterious energy.
Yeah, and you can apparently hear doors slamming.
Opening and closing.
People walking down the hallways. But something interesting that I did hear is that the people who, I don't know if they still own the house, but when I did the research, said the people that currently own the house like vehemently deny that there is anything paranormal about the house.
I've heard that as well. I've also heard people saying it's... Yes, actually, you're right. I heard them saying there was nothing going on there, but there were a lot of other stories countering that, saying there was a university student actually who apparently also heard about this house, wanted to go and explore it, and when she apparently approached the property and tried to open the door, she said she turned the handle and then the door slammed shut immediately.
Okay. So whatever's in there doesn't want anyone else in there.
If there's anything in there, because as you said, I did hear a lot of like the people currently living there saying no, there isn't anything.
I mean, we have spoken about it before. We're both like skeptics to a degree where it takes a lot to sort of convince us. But I mean, just on looks alone, it looks like a haunted house, like a typical haunted house.
It is that typical stereotypical Scooby-Doo's gonna arrive there soon kind of house.
And the thing is, I think a lot of people, when that's their home, you don't want to believe that it's this dark, haunted place. So maybe it is haunted and they're just sort of trying not to buy into that sort of thing and
who knows,
make their experience unpleasant. But I would, if you're listening, owners of the Rondebosch ghost house, I would like to investigate your property because, like I said, it's absolutely stunning and it looks like a haunted house.
I think for me, if I had to take any house over here, it would be the Tokai Manor house.
I've heard lots of stories about Tokai Manor.
And what happens over here is a lot of people report seeing a sort of reenactment of New Year's, which was held from the 1900s. A story goes that there was this young nobleman and he was dared to ride his horse around the living room. As one does. Oh, it's New Year's, we all do very silly things, tipsy. Yeah. We'll go with it. But because of the large amount of alcohol that he had consumed, and there were a lot of loud noises, and that spooked the horse. So he was unable to control it, and the horse galloped out the door and toppled off the very high veranda that they have, killing both the horse and the nobleman.
Is it bad that I feel more sorry for the horse?
I do too. The horse did not want to be dragged into all of that, and we just people, really?
Humans are dumb.
I agree. But the people say that to this day, especially on New Year's Eve, you can hear a horse riding around.
That's
the
bizarre.
manor.
Imagine hearing that.
Yeah. They said that the spectral horse and rider still canter through the forest sometimes as well, especially on New Year's Eve, as I said. And they still try to repeat their foolish act, and they'll even jump up onto the veranda.
Wow.
Take with a pinch of salt, I'm guessing. But yeah, apparently a lot of the people who work early hours of the morning in the forest, the workers have all said they can hear a horse going at full gallop along the road.
That's crazy.
And that they've actually seen a rider wearing clothes from like a bygone era. And he always heads straight towards the old house.
I mean, sort of digressing slightly, but sort of on the same topic at the same time. I've noticed in a lot of the research that I did for this episode is that a lot of the Cape Town hauntings seem to be residual. I don't know if you picked that up too.
I definitely did.
Yeah.
That you've actually just put into words something I wasn't clicking. There was something different about our ghost stories to other ones you find online, and yeah, you're right. They're all actually residual.
Not all of them, but
Most
majority
of them.
they're like repeating some part of history.
You're right.
It's interesting.
Maybe Cape Town's just so awesome and want to stay around.
Yeah. Relive the good old days.
Well, we can't go without talking about the Castle of Good Hope.
Oh yeah, I feel like that's like our big one. I mean, I remember before I even lived here seeing an episode of Ghost Hunters International, and they came to South Africa, and that was one of the places that they investigated.
I actually didn't see that one.
Oh god, it was years ago. I was really young. Like I said, I didn't even live here yet. But they caught some amazing evidence in that place.
So, I mean, I think that's a really, really good historical place. And it makes sense that you would have a lot of paranormal things going on there. And I know a lot of workers and visitors report hearing voices and footsteps, especially in the dungeon and in the narrow corridors. And the bell in the bell tower, which was supposedly walled up centuries ago after a soldier hung himself there.
Okay. Sorry, I just realized that I got completely mixed up in a previous episode because we'd researched these at the same time. And I got completely mixed up. So if you want to go back and listen, you can go find my blups in a previous episode.
No, so they bricked the bell tower up, and it sometimes rings on its own accord. They've also reported that there's a black dog that haunts the property, and it's also known to approach visitors and then it disappear.
That's so, I don't know, that's like the most interesting part to me for some reason. Black dog.
Me too.
Because I mean, black dogs are part of, I think, Irish folklore. And
yes, you're right.
It's always been something that's really interesting to me because some people say they're
demonic.
They're demonic, or they're like a symbol of death and stuff like that. So it's, and also we've had an episode in the past about paranormal pets and stuff. So it's something that's out of the realm of normal like hauntings, and the normal paranormal is to have like an animal. I think it's so interesting.
I think it is too.
Yeah.
There's another story about a Lady Anne Barnard. And she was one of the castle's residents in the late 18th century. And I think she lived there as the colony's first lady and often entertained sort of important people who would obviously come to visit. And apparently death won't stop her from fulfilling her duties because whenever important people go there today, she supposedly appears. I think there's another one about a governor who was apparently really strict, and he was a militant man. And he once sentenced, I think, 7 soldiers to die by hanging. And one of those soldiers is said to have cursed him because later that day he was found dead at his desk after having a heart attack. And supposedly he still walks around there. And people have reported seeing and hearing him, so...
Sure. I don't know, have you ever been to the castle?
Never. Have you?
I've been once, and that was sort of after doing a bit of research and wanting to, see the place for myself. And granted, I went during the day where there were a lot of tourists and visitors, so I felt like I couldn't really read the energy of the place very well, but I will say that the one place that I got the weirdest vibe from was the dungeon. But at the same time, I also feel like
it's a dungeon. It sets itself up.
But we sort of went in and we closed the door, so it was completely pitch black.
Hey, I'm glad I wasn't there.
And yeah, like the feeling to me was, again, like being watched. Like there is someone around you and you just can't see anything. It's not a nice feeling.
I drive past it all the time, and I mean, they do say it's like one of the most haunted places in the Cape.
Yeah. I don't know. One of my friends actually... apparently his school did like a sleepover thing at the castle, and I thought that was so cool.
That is crazy.
They did it obviously as like a historical thing, not as like a paranormal thing, but I'm like, I'm gonna camp there overnight.
No, I don't.
Well, if I ever do, you're coming with me. It's happening.
Fun. We have such a fun roster of things lined up for our future. I cannot wait.
Hey, you wanted to be friends with me?
But a lot of investigators that have gone there have recorded like blood-curdling screams within the castle walls, voices, footsteps, even shadows. But yeah.
I think I'm correct in saying that a lot of people have seen soldiers sort of like in the, what do you call them, turrets?
Yeah.
So they've seen soldiers up there sort of just, pacing back and forth.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So once again, residual kind of hauntings.
Just like sort of on the topic, just gonna go here for a second. In a previous episode, we were talking about the Paris catacombs.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if all of our viewers are aware, but we have tunnels under Cape Town as well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we do. Not full of human remains, but they do tours, and apparently some people say that the tunnels are haunted. I've yet to do a tour, but but I really want to.
I was going to say I'm waiting for that comment. I'm waiting for Devin to tell me we're going down to the tunnels.
Let's do a Freaky Fridays field trip.
I don't think so.
We're going to pull Yanu in as well. He says he's in, so let's do it.
I think another one is one way too close to me for my liking, but the Grooteskier Hospital. And I mean, we have spoken about this one before. Yeah. But I think it's had its doors open since a long time ago. And it's seen many patients, staff and visitors through its halls. And it's believed that some never really left.
Yeah, well, I mean, a hospital in general is going to be so full of, like, death and illness and trauma.
Exactly, and there's supposedly a ton of stories, but one of them being sightings of a young nurse who committed suicide, or a patient who fell to death while trying to escape. And then there's also a spooky but friendly Sister Fatima.
Yes, I read about this. This is actually really heartwarming.
Who's been helping nurses on their rounds.
That's so sweet.
It is, actually.
Going beyond the Call of Duty. But yeah, not all hauntings are scary. Some are just kind of sweet
cute,
and heartwarming.
Yeah. Not cute, that wasn't the word, but yeah.
It is cute, kind of. It's like when we were talking about the Stanley Hotel and there's the woman that unpacks people's bags. Like,
yes,
that's not
exactly.
Scary.
It's
helpful.
touching.
Yeah.
And I think Simonstown's also got a few stories. You said you had some tales from there that you enjoyed.
Yeah, no, they do a ghost tour every now and then around Simonstown. They sort of starts early evening and they walk you around and tell you the various stories, and there are so many. It's almost like you have to pick the place that isn't haunted in Simonstown.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, there are so many stories. I remember one specifically. It was like down a little alley. I can't remember the full story, but to me it was the one that stood out the most because it's like this little dark alley where someone got killed and they still haunt there. I can't remember the full story. It was years ago, but I would recommend if you're in Cape Town or if you visit Cape Town to try and go on one of those ghost tours because they're really good with giving you the history and
For me, I think the one that stood out to me in Simonstown is there's this museum there said to be home to this haunted painting of a young lady. And no matter what photos you take, the painting cannot ever develop. And I've heard this mentioned by a few people, actually. So yeah, it's apparently if you take a picture with that painting or just of the painting, it won't develop.
Again, it's like a hospital where there's like so much trauma and stuff. You expect it to be haunted. With a museum, there are so many trigger objects and parts of history that you kind of expect a haunting. I didn't know there was a museum in Simonstown.
I'm trying to think where it was. I think it might have even been in the castle. There's also a story of a painting of a governor and apparently dogs
growl at it.
Yeah.
Wait, where was that again?
I'm trying to remember.
I feel like it was in the castle.
I also think it was in the castle.
I do remember coming across that, but I can't remember exactly. I'm useless today. Useless with my facts.
My favorite one is actually, I think it's it's around Constantinek and Hout Bay. And it's a restaurant called Kitima. I may have that wrong. What's boggling my mind right now is I drove past that yesterday. And I remember reading the sign as I went past it, and now I'm just clicking, that is that place.
Oh, wow.
It's really cool when we're suddenly telling stories and we can relate to it and we've been there, you know? Yeah. But anyway, the staff there over the years have actually reported really strange sightings of both inside and outside of the house of a British soldier and a young woman. And the story is that sometime in the 1840s, the British soldier sought the hand of her, or I think her name was Elsa Klutter. She lived there with her family, but her father refused it and banned them from seeing each other. And distraught at the loss of his love, the soldier hanged himself in an oak tree outside. And Elsa is said to have died shortly after that. And so it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet tale because these days, supposedly the two longing lovers can reportedly still be seen in and around the house. And what I find really touching about this is they sort of consider the staff at the restaurant consider the pair to be fascinating guests, and they lay a table out for them every night with some food. That's really cool.
Because I was about to say, I'm like so invested in the story. Like, did they end up together? Are they sighted together? Like, you know, it's so cute.
From what I understand, he always wanders around outside and she's always stuck inside.
No.
But I found it really cool that the staff lay out a table for them.
Yeah, I really love it when, you know, a place is supposedly haunted
Accept
and
it.
people embrace it.
Exactly.
Rather than like trying to make a big deal of it and like
It's
make it
kind
a
of like
money-making
they're paying
scheme.
respect towards it.
Yeah, I think that's lovely.
I
That's
think
sweet.
so too.
But yeah, we sort of have to wrap up now, but there are, again, so many more stories. I feel like every week we come in with a topic and there's just not enough time to cover everything.
Never is. But that doesn't say we can't come back to it.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you didn't have tons of reasons to visit our magnificent city before, here's some more.
Yeah, now you do. Come and see our ghosts. We have plenty.
Well, thank you for joining us this week, and we will see you next time.
Cheers. Freaky Fridays, hosted by Devin Beatty
And Megan Portnoy, and produced with the generous assistance of Janu Blau.
and Blended Podcasts.
Brought to you by Blended Audio.